Yeah. Hello viewers, welcome to our program on immigration and you. I am your immigration attorney Michael Fulwani, and once again we have with us my partner David Nagman. David, welcome. And as you remember, every
Thanks so
program
much,
that I have
Michael.
been coming on with the other partners, I have always mentioned that David we miss him because he is traveling in India, and when he comes from India, he is going to give you a lot of information about his meetings with the American consular officials. So not this one, next week's program we will devote completely to that, but this week is a very important thing to tell you about the cutoff dates about the month of December 2013 and the predictions that came from the Department of Labor with the visa bulletin and another important bulletin issued by them on the cutoff dates predictions. So we'll talk all about that in today's program. So here are the cutoff dates for the month of December 2013. The family preference categories, the first preference, which is for the unmarried sons and daughters over the age of 21 of US citizens, advances by 3 weeks to November 15, 2006. The family 2A category, which are the spouse and unmarried children of green card holders under the age of 21, no movement, and the date remains the same, September 8, 2013, which is as good as current, I would say. But let's go continue. The F2B category, which are again the unmarried sons and daughters of the green card holders over the age of 21, moves 5 weeks, which is good, to May 1, 2006. The family third preference, which are the married sisters and married sons and daughters of US citizens, advances by 4 weeks to March 8, 2003. And the fourth preference, the married or unmarried brothers and sisters of US citizens, advanced by 2 weeks to September 8, 2001. Now the employment preference categories, the first preference is current for all the countries. The second preference, advanced degree holders, is current for most of the countries except India. India is a bad news, as we had already said earlier. It is retrogressed by 4 years and 28 weeks, and the date is November 15, 2004. And some bad news is still to come, maybe in the predictions we'll let you know. The employment third preference is retrogressed by 3 weeks for India to September 1, 2003. But for the world, it actually moved by 1 year to October 1, 2011. So you see a wide difference between the third preference of other countries, which include many other countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, many countries. Bad news for India, it went back to 2003. The employment third preference, which are the unskilled workers, that retrogresses also by 3 weeks to September 1, 2003.
Right.
And moved forward for the other countries by 1 year to October 1, 2011. The employment fourth preference, which are the special immigrants, which include religious priests and religious workers, is current for all the countries. And for the employment fifth preference, the investors of $1 million or $500,000 is current for all the countries. Now let me first go over the predictions that came with the visa bulletin, and then David, you have information about the subsequent the information that came from the department, because what they might have realized after the initial predictions, things were still not as good as they thought. So the information that came with the visa bulletin for the month of December 2013. Remember, every month we get a visa bulletin from Washington, D.C., the State Department, which tell us how the categories are going up or back or progressing and what are the predictions. So in December's visa bulletin, they said that the family first preference will move at the rate of 3 to 5 weeks every month. If 2A category, no forward movement for a long time, maybe for the whole year, because they moved so fast that became alternate current, so they are going to remain that category until probably September 2014 at this date, which is what I told you earlier, is September 8, 2013. The family third preference, which is for the married sons and daughters of US citizens, the prediction is that it will advance at the rate of 3 to 5 weeks every month. The fourth preference, which is the brothers and sisters of US citizens, also the prediction is it may advance by 2 or 3 weeks every month. In the employment preference categories, the monthly movement, probably they are looking at employment first preference as current, employment second preference worldwide other than India, current, China 3 to 5 weeks, India no further movement. So that's the bad news that is not good. So the third preference employment, again for India, no forward movement. I mean, this is terrible. We'll talk about that in a minute. No forward movement, I mean, for the coming months is in the employment fourth preference current and the fifth preference is current. So these are the predictions that came. But then all of a sudden we got another bulletin that David is going to tell you. What is that saying? David?
Well, actually, I don't know that this is any better news. Basically, what had happened is that there was a meeting that was a liaison meeting that was held by the American Immigration Lawyers Association with Charles Oppenheimer and some of his representatives at the U.S. Department of State. And essentially what they did is they addressed the backlog, the retrogression of EB-2, and essentially gave reasons as to why this retrogression occurred, and also, unfortunately, did not give us much hope as to when we're going to see more EB-2 visas in the future. So it seems, and you know, in general, the predictions always are that at the end of the year, we tend to find that there are more of these visas that do become available. Now it seems like we're not going to see EB-2s until much later in the year, which of course could go up August, September, October. So what does that mean for our viewers? Well, it means that
you're looking both at the employment second and employment third preferences.
Exactly, in employment second and third preference categories.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially what the U.S. Department of State said is that the demand has been so exceptionally high that they had to put it into retrogression. And so, you know, what can our clients do to avoid, you know, these problems? Well, of course, we always talk about cross-chargeability, and that's one way we can avoid these, you know, these extreme backlogs is cross-chargeability. The other thing that, you know, we have to remind our viewers is that, and you know, be aware if you are in H-1B and you're waiting for your priority dates to become current, then one of the things that you can potentially do is, you know, use, it's not AC-21, but it's a part of AC-21. It was a provision that came down at that time where what you're allowed to do is to extend your H-1B incrementally in 1 year increments if you have a labor certification application that was pending. If you have an approved I-140, of course, you can extend that H-1B for 3 years. However, be aware, of course, that anything can happen. So it's not a bad idea for you to consider the possibility of getting concurrent H-1Bs in place in the event that, let's say, a company lays you off, then at least you have another status to fall back into, and then use that as a way to secure your potential position in H-1B on a going forward basis. So what are we talking about here? Well, for example, what we mean is if you have an H-1B, and you have an H-1B with, let's say, Cisco or Motorola, a good, solid company, why not get a concurrent H-1B for 5 hours with a company that maybe you're the owner of, maybe a self-employment type of H-1B, or maybe you have a friend who has a information technologies company, and they're willing to give you a 5-hour project per week. If you pick up a concurrent H-1B, then in the event, God forbid, Cisco, Motorola, one of those large corporations, which of course you can never predict what's going to happen in the future, if they lay you off, you then have another H-1B to fall back on, and then of course you can try to pick up another full-time H-1B. and use that as
I
a way
think I want
to
say
secure your
a little
position.
more that maybe a lot of our viewers or clients and people that we talk to don't know that they can have a second H-1B also,
Right.
a part-time H-1B also. I mean, if there's an employer who is not willing to give you that much salary because it's a full-time job, and if he decides, okay, forget the full-time, can you work part-time for me? And then the part-time salary, you can have a part-time H-1B also. You
That's
can
right.
have both, a full-time and a part-time also.
That's
So there are a
right.
lot of these options, good options. But let me just say
Right.
one
And-
more.
And the other
yeah.
point, Michael, which I think is really important for our viewers to know, is that if you're going to pick up a concurrent H-1B, you can do that. You can do that without waiting for April 1st.
Correct.
So because it's not subject to the cap.
Cap doesn't
so you
apply,
can
yeah.
so you can pick that up at any time. Yeah.
Okay, one other thing that about the cutoff dates, the explanation that came in the second prediction bulletin that came in, what's happening, why is that happening is this is the reason. The usage, the way it works like EB1 first preference category is current, so some of the numbers are not used there. So the system is that falls
drops down.
to the EB2.
Yep.
But as the number of EB1s increase, the number that are falling down to 2 is reduced.
Exactly.
That's what is the causing also the problems of the cutoff dates not moving forward or going back.
Exactly.
Second thing also about the EB3 to EB2, same principle is there. If the EB2 numbers, EB3 numbers are, EB2 numbers,
Upgraded. EB3s are upgraded to EB2s.
upgrade to EB.
Exactly.
People are all, everybody's
So
was in
that-
3.
that's
and
right.
David
Well,
has
that-
been pushing, do also try to go to EB, convert 2.
That's right, and that's what we've seen over the past 2 years or so. We've seen people coming back to us who have secured their EB2 positions, seeking EB1 classification, or if they're EB3s, they want to upgrade them to
But,
EB2.
so that's what is happening. Then the demand on EB2 keeps increasing.
Exactly.
And that's why it's either retrogressing and not going forward.
Exactly.
But to some extent, it should help EB3 in a way, but it's not happening also because if the AP, those people are not reflected here. Because until they
Right.
get the visa, then drop the EB3 out. This is still remains in the system.
Exactly.
Okay. Again, the same
So-
thing, they are saying that the EB2 India visa numbers used for applicants with priority date before November 2004, and the fact that total worldwide quota is about 8,000 numbers is lower than the previous year.
Exactly. So essentially what they were doing is they were saying that these are the reasons why EB2 has a lot of pressure on it and why it's retrogressed. The key, I think, for our viewers is, of course, to plan. The idea is planning. Plan, if you can, to try to get your cases jockeyed into EB1. Now, a lot of people say, well, do I have a good EB1 case? Well, here's the thing. EB1, of course, has a certain number of criteria which you can take a look at on the internet. It's very clear as to what prongs you have to meet. You have to obviously have evidence which meets a certain number of prongs. But also, don't forget to take into account there's a case called Kazarian. And Kazarian adds this special subjective determination that has to go into whether or not you have an EB1 case. So if you or any of your friends or family have any questions at all about your possible bumping up from an EB2 to an EB1, which is a great way, of course, to avoid this retrogression, please reach out for either us or competent immigration counsel who can tell you whether or not you have a good EB1 case. In our office, what we do is we'd be more than happy if you send us a copy of the resume to review the resume and let you know what we feel your chances might be.
And if you are single, it's not a bad idea to get married to somebody who's a US citizen
Just don't let my wife hear that suggestion, okay?
or a green card holder also, it's not bad.
Of course.
Or even a person who is born in a different country. You are in the line, stuck up in India.
Cross-chargeability.
So you are single, you get married to a girl or a boy from other country, maybe Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, any of the countries, then you move into the same priority-wise in terms of the country of birth of the spouse, which is current and not current, but I mean it's almost good. Well, that person must have already a priority date of 2007, 8 or 9 or whatever, and you see the present EB2 for the other countries is October 2011. So in all probabilities, he gets married and then he can request the immigration to shift the quota from coming from the wife's country of birth rather than his. And this way it will move faster. So get married if you are single citizen, green card holder, or a person born in a different country. What do you say?
I think we're just about out of time, but I think when we come back, we can maybe readdress that particular issue.
So, and also I understand that some people may not get a full idea of this. Always please feel free to contact us. Our email address and contact information is shown on the screen. We thank you very much for watching the program, and goodbye.